They say the courtroom is where justice lives. But the moment the judge looked me in the eye and said, "We're ready to make a ruling," I felt like I couldn't breathe. My whole world hinged on the next 5 seconds. And just when I thought I was about to lose everything, my 6-year-old son stood up and changed everything. My name is Jessa Carter. I'm 33 years old. A freelance graphic designer. A widow. And most importantly, a mother. My little boy Theo is 6. He loves dinosaurs, grilled cheese, bedtime stories, and insists on sleeping with a small nightlight shaped like a rocket. He's got my dark eyes, his father's quiet smile, and a spirit that's bigger than his tiny frame can contain. For a while, our life was simple. Nothing fancy, just filled with the kind of quiet joy people take for granted until it's gone. We had a small 2-bedroom house on the edge of town with a patchy backyard where I'd set up a sandbox and a second-hand swing set I found on Facebook Marketplace. I was managing rent, bills, and keeping Theo's lunchbox full of crustless sandwiches and peanut butter snacks. It wasn't perfect, but it was ours. And then one rainy Tuesday afternoon it all changed. I still remember the smell of garlic and ginger in the pan. I was halfway through making chicken stir-fry when my phone rang. The officer on the other end said my husband Aaron had been in an accident. A semi-truck on the interstate. He didn't make it. Grief is a strange, cruel thing. It doesn't hit you like a wave. It gnaws at you like a quiet animal in the walls, constant and invisible. I remember holding Theo that night, whispering, "It's okay," even when I didn't believe it myself. For weeks, maybe months, I moved through our home like a ghost. I kept the routines going, school drop-offs, snacks, bedtime songs. But inside I was hollow. Theo saved me. Not by doing anything extraordinary. Just by being there. By crawling into my lap without asking. By handing me his drawings of Happy Mommy and telling me knock-knock jokes that made no sense. He gave me a reason to get up every day. He didn't need me to be perfect. He just needed me to show up. So I did. And we found our rhythm. He'd sit beside me on the couch, legs tucked under him, blanket wrapped around us both. We'd watch cartoons, read picture books, and talk about dinosaurs and Dad. Theo would say, "It's okay if you miss Daddy. I do too." And I'd smile through the tears and thank the universe for giving me him. But then came Margot, my mother-in-law. From the beginning, Margot never liked me. She didn't yell or cause scenes. She undermined. Quietly. Strategically. She'd make comments like, "Jess is doing her best, bless her heart," or, "Aaron could have been a senator if he hadn't settled down so early." After Aaron died, she started showing up more often. At first, I thought she just missed him, wanted to stay close to Theo. So I let her in. Birthday parties. School plays. Sunday dinners. I opened my door thinking maybe we could rebuild. But it never felt right. She'd scoff at how I dressed Theo. Criticize the meals I cooked. "He needs routine," she'd say. Structure. She didn't like that I let him choose his clothes or that I still sang him lullabies. One afternoon, I walked into the kitchen and found her handing him a glossy brochure for a prep school I'd never heard of. "We can't afford this," I told her gently. She didn't even look up. "Some environments are just better for children," she replied, stirring her tea. Not every mother understands that. I bit my tongue. But inside, a storm had started. I began setting boundaries. Fewer visits. No unsolicited school brochures. No undermining bedtime. That's when she turned cold. She stopped pretending to play nice. And I started noticing things, questions Theo would ask after weekends with her. "Mommy, do you think I'd be happier living with Grandma?" It hit me like a punch to the stomach. She was planting seeds. Subtle. Poisonous. And then 2 weeks later I got the envelope. I thought it was junk mail at first. A thick beige legal envelope addressed to me in black print. Inside, a petition for full custody. My hands went numb. I sank to the kitchen floor as Theo played with his toys just a few feet away. Full custody. Not shared. Not supervised. He claimed I was unstable. Financially incapable. Emotionally compromised. She called my freelance work erratic. My parenting inconsistent. My grief damaging. And worst of all, she wasn't entirely wrong. Yes, I cried sometimes. Yes, I had dishes in the sink and forgot laundry in the washer. Yes, I still missed Aaron every single day. But I showed up. Every morning, every school pickup, every nightmare. I was the one holding him when he needed safety. I was the one telling him stories about his dad. I was the one who made sure he knew he was loved. I called my sister Lena the moment I could speak. She was over in an hour. She read the papers twice before saying a word. Then she looked at me and said, "She's playing dirty. But you can fight this, Jess. You have to." I didn't have money for a top lawyer. I found a kind public defender, overworked but well-meaning. His advice was practical but hollow. Be calm. Be respectful. Document everything. Meanwhile, Margot hired one of the top family law attorneys in the state. The kind with a website, a PR team, and experience making struggling mothers look like unstable train wrecks. I started collecting everything I could. Theo's school reports. Pediatrician notes. Photos of birthday parties. Emails from teachers about how kind and bright he was. Every drawing, every bedtime selfie, every reminder that this little boy was loved and thriving. At night, after Theo fell asleep, I sat on the living room floor surrounded by folders and flash drives while reruns of Friends played on mute in the background, just to keep me sane. The first court hearing was procedural. No decisions made. Just dates and formalities. But seeing Margot walk in with her polished lawyer and that tight-lipped smirk made my hands tremble. She smiled at Theo when he entered, but her eyes locked onto mine like a predator. And her lawyer? He spoke like I wasn't even in the room. "She has no reliable income," he said. "She lives paycheck to paycheck. Works from home barely. Suffers from anxiety. Is visibly still in mourning." I sat there silently, exactly as I'd been coached. Be calm. Be respectful. Don't let them rattle you. But inside I was screaming. Afterward, Theo asked me quietly, "Am I going to have 2 homes now?" I swallowed the lump in my throat and whispered, "No, baby. Everything's going to be okay." But I didn't believe it. Then Margot made her next move, an anonymous call to Child Protective Services. A caseworker knocked on my door at 10 a.m. on a Wednesday. I was on a Zoom call with a client. Theo was in pajamas building Legos. She was polite. Professional. She toured the house. Asked questions. Took notes. I handed her references. School contacts. Pediatrician phone numbers. She smiled and said everything looked fine. But when she left, I locked the door and sobbed into the laundry basket. That week, Theo drew me a picture. Just stick figures. Me and him holding hands in front of our house. He wrote, "I love you more than everything." I taped it to the fridge and stared at it for an hour. I didn't know how this would end. But I knew one thing, I wasn't giving up. Not on my son. Not on the life I fought to keep alive after Aaron died. Not without a fight.
People always say, a mother's love is enough. But what they don't tell you is how easily people try to convince the world it's not. That you're not. And when someone with money, status, and a bitter smile decides to challenge your right to raise your child, suddenly love feels like it's on trial too. After the CPS visit, I barely slept. Every knock at the door made my stomach twist. I became paranoid, double-checking locks, rereading emails, scanning the playground at Theo's school to make sure Margot wasn't lurking in the background. But I didn't stop fighting. I kept documenting everything. I printed every email from his teachers praising his behavior, every attendance record, his pediatrician's notes confirming his health. I even took photos of our fridge covered in crayon drawings and his little chore chart with gold stars. Every piece of our life became evidence, not of perfection, but of presence. Every night, I'd wait until Theo was asleep before laying out folders on the living room floor like armor. The lamp would cast long shadows across the carpet while I read through witness prep guides and watched old family videos, just to hear Aaron's voice again. Then one evening, I walked past Theo's room and saw him sitting cross-legged on the floor, scribbling something onto a piece of lined paper. His tongue was sticking out a little, his brows furrowed like he was solving a math problem. "What are you working on, buddy?" I asked, kneeling beside him. He looked up, serious in a way no 6-year-old should ever have to be. "A letter," he said. "For the judge." I blinked. "A letter?" He nodded. "Just in case they don't know how much I want to stay with you." My throat closed. "That's very sweet, Theo. But it's okay, Mommy. I won't say anything mean about Grandma," he added quickly. "I just want them to know what it's like to live with you." He folded the paper neatly into quarters and tucked it into his Spider-Man backpack. "I'll take it with me, just in case. I should have told him not to, that this wasn't his responsibility, that it wasn't a child's job to fight legal battles. But I couldn't say it, not to a little boy who had already lost a father and was now watching the world try to take his mother. So I just hugged him, tight, tighter than I had in weeks. The night before the final hearing, the house felt like it was holding its breath. Lena came over to help me prepare. She brought snacks I didn't eat and old photo albums she thought might help. Theo's 3rd birthday, his first day of preschool. A selfie of us baking cookies, flour on our cheeks, both laughing. "You have everything you need," she said softly, placing her hand over mine. "You just have to let them see who you really are." Later that night, after she left, I sat alone in the kitchen with cold tea and warmer memories. The letter Theo wrote was still zipped inside his backpack. I didn't dare touch it. I didn't even peek. I trusted him. The next morning was gray and cold. A drizzle tapped against the windows, like the sky itself was nervous. Theo wore his favorite navy sweater, the one with the little dinosaur patch on the sleeve. I tied his hair into a small bun at the top of his head, like he liked, and packed extra snacks in his bag. We sat silently in the courtroom lobby, his small hand in mine. When Margot arrived, it was like someone had dropped the temperature by 10 degrees. She wore a pearl-colored coat and patent leather heels. Her lawyer followed, carrying a briefcase that looked like it had its own mortgage. I didn't look at them. I couldn't. The judge called us forward. I stood with my lawyer, heart pounding so hard I thought it might echo through the room. Margot's attorney went first. Smooth, confident, performative. He painted her as the picture of stability, financial resources, a structured environment, access to tutors, and private health care. He described my life like it was a liability, a mother who worked from home erratically, who lacked local family support, who was emotionally volatile. He didn't have to lie. He just twisted the truth into something poisonous. When it was my turn, I felt my knees shake as I stood, but I didn't beg. I didn't cry. I told the judge about our routines, how Theo woke up at 7, brushed his teeth while I made oatmeal, how we walked to school hand in hand every morning. I described bedtime stories, our Tuesday library visits, our pancake Sundays. I showed school progress reports, teacher emails, photos of art projects, and Halloween costumes we'd made from scratch. I didn't talk about Margot. I didn't talk about grief. I talked about love. And then, just as the judge leaned forward to speak, Theo gently tugged my sleeve. He stepped forward, small and serious, and pulled a piece of notebook paper from his backpack. "Your Honor," he said, "can I read something?" The judge blinked. "You wrote something, son?" Theo nodded. "Yes, sir. It's for you." The courtroom went completely still. Even Margot froze. The judge glanced at me, then back at Theo. "All right, go ahead." Theo walked forward slowly, stood in front of the bench, and unfolded the paper with trembling fingers. He smoothed it out like it was sacred. "My name is Theo Carter," he began. "I'm 6 years old. I like dinosaurs, grilled cheese, and playing with my mom. I want to live with my mom." Every breath in that room seemed to vanish. He went on. "My mom gives me hugs when I feel bad. She makes pancakes on Sunday and lets me pour the syrup even when I spill it. She laughs at my jokes, even the ones that don't make sense." He looked down at the page again, voice steady. "When I have nightmares, she lets me sleep in her bed. She calls me her heart. When we miss my dad, she tells me stories, and we light a candle and talk about him. She says it's okay to cry and okay to smile too." He paused, then looked up at the judge. "I know Grandma loves me, but she says my mom is too soft. I think soft is good. I don't want to live where I can't feel stuff. I want to live where I can be a kid." Then, as calmly as he had begun, he folded the letter back into quarters and returned to his seat beside me. The judge said nothing for a long moment. The silence was thunderous. Finally, he spoke. "This court acknowledges the statement given by the minor, Mr. Theo Carter," he said slowly. "While it is unusual to admit such a statement from a child, it is clear that his words are his own and reflect a rare emotional clarity." My heart thudded painfully. He hadn't ruled yet. He turned to Margot's lawyer. "I've reviewed the petition and the supporting evidence. There is no documented abuse, no professional concern, and no indication that Ms. Carter is unfit. Financial disparity is not, in this court's opinion, sufficient cause to remove a child from his primary caregiver. Margot opened her mouth to protest, but the judge held up his hand. Furthermore, he continued, the child has expressed a sincere and compelling desire to remain with his mother. That carries significant weight in this decision. Then he turned to me. Miss Carter, he said, his voice softening, this court finds you fit to retain full legal and physical custody of your son. Visitation arrangements for Mrs. Langston may be pursued through supervised mediation, but there is no cause for permanent custody removal. I couldn't move. For a moment, I just stood there stunned. Then I dropped to my knees and pulled Theo into my arms. He wrapped himself around me like he always did, small fingers clutching my shoulders. We were still us. We had made it.
We stepped out of the courthouse into a world that looked exactly the same. Same cracked sidewalk, same gray sky, same buzz of city noise in the distance. But everything inside me had shifted. Theo squinted up at the sun just starting to break through the clouds. Did I do okay, Mommy? He asked. I knelt, pulled him close and kissed his forehead. You saved us. He beamed and I tried not to cry again. We held hands all the way to the car and I didn't let go once. Not at the crosswalk, not in the elevator, not even in the parking garage. It wasn't just about keeping him close anymore. It was about anchoring myself to the one constant that had never wavered through this storm. The day after the hearing, the house felt different. The walls were the same. Theo's pajamas were still on the floor, his dinosaur night light still glowed blue at bedtime, and the cereal was still slightly stale. But there was a stillness now, a peace. We weren't in survival mode anymore. We were free. That morning, while Theo watched cartoons with his blanket pulled up to his chin, I found the letter he had read in court, taped to the fridge with a green plastic dinosaur magnet. He had written his name in red crayon at the bottom and next to it he'd drawn a heart. Just a simple wobbly little shape, but it stopped me cold. I stood there reading it again, line by line, until the words blurred through my tears. He hadn't written it to win. He hadn't written it because I asked him to. He had written it because he loved me. Because he saw me. Because in his 6-year-old way he understood the truth of our bond. And when that bond was threatened he stood up to protect it. How do you explain that kind of love? How do you honor it? That afternoon I canceled everything on my calendar. Work, calls, errands. I packed a lunch, grabbed his little jacket and told him we were going to the park. Just us, he asked. Just us. We spent hours there. He climbed every structure, conquered the monkey bars twice and stayed on the swings so long my arms got sore pushing him. We laughed, played tag, made up dinosaur names for all the ducks near the pond, and shared a bag of too salty popcorn. I bought him an ice cream cone on the walk home, even though dinner was an hour away. He got chocolate on his shirt and I didn't care. It was the kind of day I hadn't let myself have in months. That evening, as we sat on the couch, legs tangled under a shared blanket, he asked if we could do something we hadn't done in a long time. Can we call Daddy? We used to do it sometimes after Aaron passed. I'd let Theo speak into the phone, Aaron's old number now disconnected, just to help him feel close. He'd whisper stories or ask questions and then quietly say goodnight. I hadn't expected it tonight. I hesitated. Of course, baby. I dialed, waited for the disconnection tone and then handed him the phone. He held it to his ear and whispered, Daddy, the judge said I get to stay with Mommy. I was brave. Just like you. I didn't try to hide the tears this time. I turned my head and let them fall, quietly, while Theo held the phone to his chest like it still carried a heartbeat. That night, after he was asleep, I sat in the hallway outside his room for a long time. Just listening. Just being near. The sound of his slow, even breathing was like a lullaby for my nerves. I realized then how much had been taken from us, how much fear and stress had stolen from our days. But also how much we still had. How much we had rebuilt. We were okay. More than okay, we were whole. The following week, we had our first meeting with the court-appointed mediator. Margot was required to attend so we could establish the terms of her supervised visitation rights. I won't lie, it wasn't easy. She walked in stiff-backed, her pearls perfectly aligned, not a hair out of place. She didn't say hello. Didn't ask how Theo was doing. She looked at me like she always had, with disappointment dressed up as pity. But I didn't shrink this time. I sat up straight. I spoke clearly. I made eye contact. I was the mother she had tried to erase from Theo's life. And I was still here. We agreed on once-a-month supervised visits at a neutral location. I offered a library reading room. She pushed for her house. I refused. When she tried to argue that Theo had deep emotional connections to her property, the mediator cut in with a soft but firm reminder. This wasn't about her comfort. It was about Theo's. She never apologized. Not once. Not for the lies in court. Not for the CPS report. Not for trying to steal my child from me. And you know what? I didn't need her to. I had already won. Not just custody but something bigger. I had reclaimed my voice. My strength. My space. Later that week, I sat Theo down with a warm mug of cocoa and asked him gently how he felt about the visits. Do I have to go? He asked. Not to her house, I promised. And not alone. But she still gets to see you sometimes. The court decided that. He was quiet for a minute. Then he shrugged. Hey, I guess. But only if I can bring my puzzle book. I smiled. Deal. After that, life began to return to something like normal. But not the old normal. A better one. A lighter one. I started taking on more design clients again, rebuilding my business with the kind of fire I hadn't felt in years. I stopped flinching when the phone rang. I stopped scanning the street for Margot's car. I started to breathe again. Theo? He bloomed. He started asking more questions about his dad, real ones. About what Aaron was like when we met. About whether Aaron had been good at math. About how Aaron proposed. I told him everything. We went back to our Tuesday library routine. We baked cookies every Friday night. We lit a candle on Aaron's birthday and told stories until the wax melted to a glowing puddle. And we laughed. God, did we laugh. There's this picture I took one evening. Theo in the bathtub, bubbles up to his chin, grinning with one missing tooth and shampoo in his hair. When I look at that photo now, I don't just see a child. I see a survivor. A truth teller. A little warrior in a navy sweater who once stood in a courtroom and defended his home with nothing but a folded piece of paper and an unshakable heart.
Some nights, I still wake up thinking it was all a dream. That the court hearing never happened. That the judge never ruled. That any moment now, I'll find another envelope on the doorstep. Another fight waiting to tear my life apart. When that happens, I tiptoe down the hallway. Past the creaky floorboard. Past the photo wall filled with dinosaur drawings and kindergarten handprints, and peek into Theo's room. He's always there. Usually tangled up in the blankets, mouth slightly open, one arm flung over his head like he's mid-conversation in a dream. His other arm clutches his stuffed tiger, its stripes fading. It seems stretched from so many sleepless nights. That's when I exhale. That's when the fear dissolves. We're okay. More than okay, we're safe. We're whole. I used to think being a mother meant doing everything right. Having the clean house, the color-coded calendar, the perfect responses. I thought if I faltered, even for a second, I'd prove every critic right. Especially Margot. But motherhood, real motherhood, isn't built in perfect moments. It's in the 3 a.m. fevers and the last clean pair of socks. It's in saying I'm sorry after you raise your voice, and I love you before they fall asleep. Even if your heart is breaking. It's in showing up. Even when you're exhausted. Even when you feel like you're losing. And sometimes it's in being soft. Margot used to say I was too emotional. Too indulgent. Too soft. She said it like an insult. Like softness made me weak. Like loving my child with open arms and an open heart made me fragile. But now I know better. Soft doesn't mean fragile. It means strong where it counts. Soft is staying kind even when you're being dragged into court. Soft is reading bedtime stories while you're waiting for legal documents to be printed. Soft is not letting bitterness ruin your child's view of the world. Theo taught me that. With every hug, every drawing, every time he whispered, "Don't be sad, Mommy, I'm here." He reminded me that gentleness is its own kind of armor. And I hope he remembers that forever. A few weeks after the hearing, we celebrated. Nothing big. Just the two of us. I let him pick dinner, grilled cheese and tomato soup, with dinosaur-shaped crackers on the side. We built a pillow fort in the living room and watched movies with flashlights under the covers. At one point, he looked over and said, Can I read you my letter again? I smiled. You still remember it? He nodded. Then, slowly and clearly, he recited it word for word, every line. By the end, I had tears in my eyes again. I love you more than everything, he said, just like before. I love you more than everything, I whispered back. The truth is, I'll probably never forget what Margot did. I won't forget the fear, the humiliation of having my parenting dissected in a courtroom, the ache of watching my son be pulled into a world he didn't ask for. But I also won't forget what I learned. That strength isn't always loud. That love doesn't need permission. And that no matter how someone tries to rewrite your story, you are the author. Theo still visits Margot once a month. Always supervised. Always brief. He's polite. Warm even. Because that's who he is. He asks if he can bring his puzzle book or his sketch pad. He tells her about school, about the new book he's reading, about our pancake Sundays. He never brings up the court. And neither do I. I decided not to let resentment write the ending. Not for him. Not for me. Because teaching him to hold his boundaries doesn't mean teaching him to hate. It means showing him that love can be safe. That love can have limits. And that even when people hurt you, you still get to choose peace. Sometimes, after the visits, he'll come home quieter than usual. He'll sit on the couch and lean his head on my shoulder. We don't talk much. We don't need to. He knows I'm here. That's the thing people forget when they talk about custody battles, about what's best for the child. They measure houses and bank accounts. They tally up after-school activities and health insurance coverage. But they don't measure safety. They don't measure trust. They don't ask the kid, who makes you feel seen? Who helps you feel okay when the world isn't? Theo answered that question in court, and not with legal terms or financial arguments. He answered it with a crumpled piece of paper and a tiny heart drawn in red crayon. He answered it with love, and the judge listened. So to anyone who's going through something like this, to every parent fighting to prove they're enough, I see you. I know the fear that lives in your bones, the way it keeps you awake at night and wraps around your chest in the morning like a weight you can't drop. I know the panic of someone calling you unfit, the shame of being questioned by strangers who don't know your story, the ache of watching your child be treated like an argument instead of a person. But I also know this. You're doing better than you think. You're showing up. You're loving hard. You're choosing peace when you could choose war. You're putting your child first, even when the system doesn't. And that's what makes you enough. You don't have to be perfect. You don't have to be rich. You don't have to smile all the time or have matching socks in the drawer. You just have to be there. You just have to love them so fiercely the world can't ignore it. Because in the end, love doesn't need defending. It just needs a voice. And sometimes that voice is small and clear and 6 years old, standing in the middle of a courtroom, saying, I want to live with my mom. If this story touched you, or reminded you of someone you love, please like this video. It helps more than you know. Share it with someone who needs hope today. Maybe a parent in the middle of a battle, or someone who thinks being soft means being weak. And leave a comment below. I want to hear your story. Have you ever been told you weren't enough? What did you do? How did you rise? And if you want more powerful, true stories like this, about love, strength, and the moments that change everything, subscribe to the channel. Hit the notification bell. You don't want to miss what's next. Thank you for listening, for caring, for being here. From one heart to another.